Hello, today's tutorial is about something called a skipped step. This particular term is a term I borrowed and learned from evolutionary astrology, which is a branch of astrology that I have particularly resonated with and loved and work with the most, I suppose. Even though I don't really like to say I belong to any particular school because I'm eclectic by nature. But yeah, I definitely resonate with so much of it. It's much deeper and complex, I found, in many ways, in a ways that was supportive for me, at least, in my journey, and that kind of reflects the complexity of human story, human journey, individual or collective as well. So, and in evolutionary astrology, there is something called a skip step. In plain astrological language, this is any planet, any point in your chart, including ascendant, descendant, any asteroid that squares your nodal axis. And I say nodal axis because if it squares your south node, it will square your north node. But there is a reason why they're called differently, in the sense that, in EA they're called a skip step, while in astrological terms they would just be a square. There is a reason for that, and evolutionary astrology is about looking at the person at a natal chart through the lens of a big assumption that we have many lifetimes. There is a soul that travels through many timelines and lifetimes, and and there is that core that is the same every iteration of a life we incarnate in. We are the same soul, but we live very different stories, and those stories, as I spoke in my last video on nodes, are following a certain trajectory, and that trajectory is the nodal axis. So we come from a south node, which is our collection of our past life stories. And this is just, if you think of the soul as this infinite, timeless, unbound, energetic footprint that it's unique to us, that in this time, in this life, in this body, we seem to be called certain names, be it certain gender, belong to certain cultures and societies, and certainly have certain sets of beliefs. So that is just an iteration of the same soul. And this soul had many, and some say, I don't know for a fact, but thousands of lives, different lives. Some say hundreds maybe. Either way, it's a lot of lives. And my point here is that South Node doesn't tell us about every single life or every single timeline. So it's like in this lifetime, you kind of, it's like going on trips, traveling. You don't take your whole wardrobe, for us who kind of have a base, not for the nomads by nature, that kind of travel. Their home is like the snail with a little house they carry with them, i.e. suitcase or two, whatever. But for us who are kind of, earthbound more in the sense that we have a big home or whatever, and then we have lots of stuff in our home. When we go on travels, even if they're 6 months travel, we will only take so many things with us. So that's a good metaphor for South Node, in the sense that we just pick so many clothes and so many things we want to take with us on this journey. That's your south node, and that's just a fraction of a story of your soul. And then you kind of, from that point, as you enter into this body, into this lifetime, you essentially are headed for the north node. That's kind of your destination, even though the D word is neither my favorite necessarily, nor everyone's maybe nowadays anyway, but still, for the sake of this particular tutorial, I'll use it. And so, with that kind of big overarching storyline, anything squaring this trajectory, this path, is particularly significant and meaningful. And its meaning is rooted in those many other storylines or many other lives where that storyline was cooking, was being lived. So if you think of the South Node as being the suitcase, pile of suitcases, or however many you take when you travel, one or two, I don't know, two, I take two. So two suitcases, and then this planet or asteroid or point that squares your chart, it's like lost luggage that you realize. So in my case, that would have been one bag. By the time I kind of start traveling, I get on a plane and let's say I have various stops to make. Or even when I left home, I forgot the bag at home. And the point with the lostness is that it gets found, and that's a good actually metaphor, even though I was doing it on my feet, making it up as I went along, because we will do everything to get that bag back to us. And the airlines, in the days pre-corona, would have done that for us, and it certainly happened to me a couple of times actually. So yeah, and my point here is that essentially you all of a sudden become so aware that these are the items that you actually cannot live or cannot have this holiday or travel without, even though maybe you very much could, and you could actually buy them. And in fact, I ended up buying ones because they were taking too long to come back to me, and there were some essentials as I saw them. And anyway, so this is the good metaphor for this planet squaring or anything squaring your nodal axis, and why it's called a skip step. It's like it trips you up, and you realize that you can't move past without getting it. And moving away from the traveling and suitcase metaphor, you can't move past. You get stuck if you don't resolve it, if you don't address it. And it ends up being one of the driving forces in your life. It really is, probably, in my opinion and my experience, it's the most conscious, biggest driver in your chart. So Pluto is the most potent, powerful driver, but it's unconscious, subconscious. So unless you're very, very consciously and intentionally working with your Pluto, or trying to, be consciously and continually and vigilantly engaging with it, and getting to know it and working with it, and understand it essentially, then it's subconscious, and so you don't really know that your Pluto's working you. Where with this planet, this point, these group of planets, whatever it is in your chart, like I say, and I'll talk about that in a moment, those are the drivers. It's like, there's something you need to do in this lifetime. And in a way, I would even go as far as to say that this is potentially your mission, like your purpose. And I mean, the P word and the M word, and I say this because these are the themes that I have spent my whole life trying to crack the code of how does one find those things, right, and live them and whatever. And I have a moon in Capricorn, so legacy, but also what is truest to my own sense of self, my personality in this lifetime, like my inner core, my sense of self, which is, to me, kind of moon is in that sort of happiest, most content place, like my own home, me as my own home, right? Anyway, and then legacy, and anyway, I don't want to talk about me, but my point is, that's why the mission and the purpose are the biggest themes, because it's like, purpose is like, what is it that's going to make me happy, what is going to be fulfilling for me long term Capricorn. Anyway, so, but I think even besides that, you don't have to have moon squaring your nodal axis. The purpose I'm talking about here is maybe less grand, because it might not be Capricorn, and that's kind of the top of your chart. Capricorn is an archetype that's on top of your chart. So if it's nothing to do with Capricorn, then whatever archetypes are at play, so let's just say at the moment it's just you have just one planet squaring the nodes. So that planet, its sign, the house it's in, and then obviously the aspects, but first, and you always first look at conjunction, in which case if it is squaring the planet, squaring the nodes, any planet, even if the conjunction is by all too far for the square to be technically considered a square, I would definitely consider it a square, and to your nodal axis. So I would look at them as two planets squaring, two skip steps, if you like, and then being a conjunction, that's like a fusion of the two, synergy of the two. The point with the purpose and mission is like your mission is to resolve it, and you just, it's something that you can't. It's this drive is so intense, a drive, and you can't escape it being a square, right? Squares you cannot ignore. That's one aspect you cannot ignore. I mean, I think you can ignore. I think you can even ignore oppositions, but squares you can't. Well, maybe you can't ignore oppositions. I'm now I'm not sure if I have a fully formed view on that. But in terms of squares, which is what we're talking about here, you cannot ignore them. So in that sense, it's incessant, and until you crack the code of your skipped step, you will not rest. That's the core. So if you are restless by nature, you could have other kind of, and some things, you know, this could be coming from other parts of your chart, is my point. You don't have to have a square to your nodal axis to relate to what I'm just saying, but if you have a square to your nodal axis, or squares, as in many planets, many aspects, many, you know, asteroids and points, then those themes are absolutely essential for you finding peace. So for the rest of this video, I will not be addressing any particular planet. So like I always say, my tutorials and everything I do astrology-wise is not like your, you know, standard cookbook style of content. So I don't go over every single planet and when it's squaring it, because A, it really doesn't appeal to me, but also there's so much content you can find everywhere for free, and then also some great books. And I will have a video on book recommendations sometime in the near future. And also another thing, just a side point, is that I'm coming out of a pretty sort of heavy cold I had, and I'm all still banged up, so I don't know if I sound clear. I hope I do. But also I'm pausing more than I would maybe because I'm coughing and whatever else you don't want to know. So like I say, it's not a cookbook style of anything I do here, but I give you what I say you can apply to whatever chart you have. Everyone can apply. So it's, if you have, I don't know, Venus squaring a nodal axis, and or if you have a Mars or any other planet, it can. What I'm saying here will be applicable, basically. Yeah. So on that note, and you know, I suppose maybe I'm here repeating myself, but it's not going to hurt. It's like, what does that mean for you? So so at this point you might want to even pause, or not, or come back to it. But the point is, identify what planets square your nodal axis, and you do that by going to astro.com, where I showed you. I have many videos on how to, well, one proper solid, as in the sense of just covering that topic only, how to make your own chart and how to read it and how to read those things on the page you get. So in the corner you will see there is like a triangle-y table or something. So look for your, I might actually I showed you in the previous one, where you can have true node. It says at the bottom of the chart, of that table, towards the bottom of it. And then you'll see across there is like, look for that squiggle and then see if there is a square sign. But sometimes if it's asteroids, or even I don't know if Chiron, you have to tick if it's a Chiron. Basically, another good way of doing it is just looking at the degrees of each, and as in your true node, and then look at the same degrees in the signs of the same element. So cardinal, fixed, or mutable. Sorry, I didn't mean element. Cardinal, mutable, and fixed are, I call them qualities, but I think sometimes they're called, I've seen it, modality, but I personally call it quality. So there are three qualities any sign can be. They can be cardinal, mutable, or fixed. So figure out, see what is squaring your nodal axis, and then spend some time researching that archetype. And if you have conjunctions to the archetype, so to that planet, then research the conjunctions between the two. So if it's Venus and Mars conjunct squaring a nodal axis, then spend a lot of time understanding what Venus and Mars are when they are conjunct. What does that mean? But also would look at those conjunctions, what they seem and mean, what they, how they're interpreted and described when in square, because it is a square aspect to nodal axis, but the crisis is being triggered by the nodal axis, or the two are triggering your path from your evolution. Essentially is being triggered by the conjunction that squares your nodal axis. But it's always good to, whenever it's a square in your storyline, whenever it comes up, square comes up as an aspect, I would play with every single point in that storyline, permutations, like take all the permutations of all the planets and just pair them up as squares to kind of get a really juicy sense of what these planets, when they are in crisis together, what's the vibe, what's the theme, what's happening. That will definitely illuminate a lot of the stuff for your particular storyline as to which way to go, what to settle with, what not to settle with, how to work with it, basically. So for the rest of the video, I will touch back on something called resolution node, which is, again, evolutionary astrology term. I'll also touch on what it means for relationships when you square each other's nodal axis, because that's very important. And there's not much to say, but just so you know that to look for that as well. And then, but really what I want to focus on is explain how to work with the square. And there are two kinds of squares that you can have with the skip step or steps. So I'll get into that now. So here is that example from last week where you can see from the south node, which is this one here, the arrows going up towards the north node, which is this one here. And that's if you don't have any planets or any points or asteroids. And obviously planets are the most important. If you're absolutely certain about your time of birth, I mean to the minute, then then absolutely take it with as much importance, as you would any planet squaring a nodal axis. Take your midheaven and so these points here, the ascendant, the descendant, this above Aries and then above Virgo here, and then at the bottom charted, top chart, right? Those are the 4 angles. And but you need to really be sure about your time of birth. And if you're not, by all means look at it, but then don't get too hung up on it, because that really changes, can significantly change depending on your time of birth. So yeah, if you have nothing squaring them, and then asteroids are, like I say, you find, there are all of a sudden the theme, the mythic theme, the archetype of the asteroid becomes just Google and try to find out what asteroid could be squaring it could be something very obscure, and you'll find some great gold there. It's a lengthy process. How do you have a list on the astro.com, like thousands of those asteroids? Just play, just see, kind of do intuitive something, random, picking them up and then see if any of them squaring, if you have nothing squaring your nodal axis. And then you find that's a theme, that's quite a poignant theme in your life. So anyway, so without them, this is what your kind of trajectory looks like. It's far more direct and faster moving, and you have lesser obstacles. Well, that's the idea, to be moving towards your north node. But what it also means, and I'll get into that this is, you have no obstacles necessarily such, or crisis, but the biggest crisis in this case, when you don't have a square, is that essentially this north node is like the unknown to you. That's the theory. I have squares, so I kind of don't know, and from clients and observing others, I'm not 100% sold on this, that it's a complete novelty, the north node is if you have no squares, but I kind of get it, and he vibes to a point with me, so I'll say it and share it here. So, like I say, that's your kind of clean path, more or less, if you have nothing squaring your nodes. If, however, you have something squaring your nodes, a planet or anything, then all of a sudden this path is not anymore one way. It's a two-way street. As you can see, it goes up and down, or back and forth, and here we are. So this is, I think I mentioned at the beginning, or was it one of the versions that I deleted? Basically, when a planet squares your nodal axis, it means that you have, that's the theory, and I certainly resonate with it, is that you have been to your north node, so you kind of completed this journey, but you have like cheated. Sorry, the vision, the image I had in my mind, just as I said this, I had the classroom and, girl in a skirt, and that was me, by the way. And on a knee, having a little note of something that, like a test or whatever, so I would and no one would check under my skirt. Sorry, I think this is post heavy cold. I had sort of delirium, post delirium. Maya speaking here. Anyway, so when you have a square the planet in this lifetime, to me, it says that you have kind of skipped. That's the whole thing about skipped. You skipped. You kind of went, oh, yeah, it's fine. I'll deal with you later, or I have a botched up job, I suppose. So you made it to the North Node, and this is just going with the kind of story, traveling kind of metaphor here. You made it to your North Node, to your destination, right? And you kind of go, oh, it's that luggage thing, I forgot. I thought I could do without it, but actually I can't, really, actually I have blisters on my feet, I'm good for nothing, I'm gonna die early because I wasn't taking care of my health, because I didn't bother to get that bag back or whatever. So that, metaphorically speaking, you kind of have to go back home, to home being the South Node, right? And then, once you recuperate and once you convalesce and get better, you go on the journey again. But by now, this bag, because you left it and you didn't bother with it for so long, whatever you had in it is maybe too small or too... So it's just like, it's this sense of like, you make progress, but you really need to attend to this bag. You either need to resew, rebuy, get a new one, donate. So you need to kind of think very holistically about this bag that you lost, and you kind of thought you can do without, being in this metaphor. That's your skip step, right? And you need to, so would you just throw it? You don't want to just throw it. This is plastic, this is, non-degradable material, so what do you do with that? You really need to do it well. You need to give it all of you, and to decide so that your soul is happy with this decision, like your deepest heart of hearts is content with how you handled your error ways in the sense that you have not served yourself well. You have shorthanded yourself. So how do you deal with this really kind of left out, worn out, just not really used to anyone kind of now anymore? How do you recycle it? How do you repurpose it? How do you reuse it? I love these metaphors. So that's the kind of point of the skipped step, as in why this trajectory is now, and I think the term is flip-flopping, I think that's a term in evolutionary astrology. But so you kind of go back, you go to North Node, and then you kind of go, you need to come back to the South Node a bit more now, because you haven't really got this bag, you haven't really dealt with it fully, properly. And at this point, I think the bag metaphor is maybe getting a bit too tight and small for this story, because it's in a sense of a bag. You can really spend a month maybe, but by the end of the month you have done it, you have sorted out. So if month is a lifetime, yes, or maybe 2/3 of a lifetime, possibly. But since month is not really anyone's lifetime, the bag metaphor isn't so good. So stretch it out and just now use it as astrological metaphor, which is, you can't, it's a kind of lifetime work, right? It's a work of a lifetime. Not necessarily a legacy, although if it's Capricorn involved, if it's in Capricorn planet, that would definitely, I would strongly suggest that's your legacy, or the biggest piece of your legacy. So to wrap up, with anything squaring a nodal axis, it means that you will be, and you should be, as in it's good that you do that, so don't feel bad or wrong, not that you would, but just in case, that you're doing both of your nodes. And I'm coming to, there is a resolution node which suggests that there is kind of more concentrated activity to begin with in one particular area, one of the nodes, and then that kind of helps the movement towards the North Node. I'll talk about it in a moment, but that's the point. Essentially, they go between the two, and both are familiar. You've been at both ends, but you just now that you're making the journey far more fulfilling and aligned with your compass, with your truth, with your and you stay in your integrity where before you weren't, like me cheating in my elementary school with my knee under my skirt. So that wasn't in integrity. So, but you want to do it right. So that's your past life story, and you kind of want to do it. It might not be. It doesn't have to be to do with anything with cheating, obviously. But just like it's not. It wasn't in your best interests, but it wasn't right by you, and it wasn't right by your moral standards, or even better word, really, values. So let me just touch on this resolution node. So hopefully you can see here. So the nodes, can you see these arrows going, is this clockwise? I have no sense of space in this sense. So you see they go from, well, anyway, I won't confuse you with my words. You can see where the arrows are going. So, and in red is a planet or point or asteroid. So if you imagine this north node here and the south node here, how they're moving. So this north node will soon, or at some point, will make a conjunction to your planet. Yeah, you get that. Now, that's not the resolution node, because I'm just using that example because it's easier, at least I think it is easier to show you the movement and the conjunction moment. So, but if you think of the south node, so that's before you were born, what node made the conjunction closest to your birth, right? So what's the latest conjunction the planet square your nodes made to either of the nodes? Which node did it conjunct first before you were born, or last rather? So hopefully this didn't confuse you. I'm really not good at this, so that's why I don't do much of the technical and astronomical stuff. But so if you can see, right, so this is coming up to the conjunction, but you're already born with this chart, where this has already made a conjunction to this planet, and therefore that's your resolution node. Yeah? So the idea behind the resolution node, interpretively speaking, is, the way I see it, is essentially the idea behind the planet conjunct south node. And then more to the point, it's about phasal relationships between planets and points and asteroids and all that. And I don't think I might do the video just to show you, but it's so complex and I don't know. But I might just have it as show you what I talk about when I say phasal relationships. And I'll link, if I can find something online, in the video below. So, and this actually can relate this more easily if you don't understand or you don't know about phasal relationships, to new moon, first quarter, full moon, last quarter, and then new moon again. So the moon phases. So at the new moon, things are in the dark, they're starting, they're beginning, they're budding, they're germinating, the spark has kind of happened. The seed has been planted. And it's at the full moon phase that we kind of see it full bloom. But the first kind of inkling of what this thing will look like, the flower, the colors or whatever, I'm not really versed in gardening, so I don't know how that works, whether you can know the color before it actually shows itself in full bloom. Not sure, probably you can. But anyway, you get what I'm saying. You see it in full bloom. You don't know what that looks like until it is in full bloom. So there's that sense of illumination, if I'm sticking with the metaphor of gardening and plants. But at the first kind of, the first crisis, which is a first quarter square, which is what this is. So this is your planet squaring the nodes, and this south node here, which is the resolution node in this picture of mine, example of mine, was conjunct your planet prior to your birth, and out of the two, it was the most recent conjunction to your planet squaring the nodes. So it was the south node. So at that point, something was planted, and you were in another body, or maybe, I don't even know whether it literally it seems a bit too literal, yeah? I don't think it works like that, but yeah. In this lifetime, you were born with this first quarter square to your planet squaring nodes. And what that means, first quarter square, is the crisis of action, in the sense that now you need to do something about it. You might have to you might have to repot it, you might have to You know, maybe trim, or again, not the best metaphor to use, but for me who doesn't know much about gardening, but whatever you need to do, kind of quite vigorous activity, and all to keep it alive and healthy, so it survives. So that's a crisis piece, survival, right? Like proper existential survival for the plant. And in your case, for all the themes that your south node house and the sign and whatever else you have there, if you have conjunctions, and then obviously your point, your planet that's squaring them. So all those themes bundled up together, you know, and you do that by looking at whatever the planet is. So if it's a planet, let's say Mars in Scorpio squares your south node in Leo, I would look at Mars square Sun, because Leo is Sun. Obviously, I would look at Mars square Nodal Axis. There's your one point as well. But to kind of dig deeper, to really find your own interpretations of your chart, I would look at Mars square Sun, because it is a Mars, but it's in Scorpio, and also Mars is a kind of old traditional ruler of Scorpio. But I would also look at Pluto square Mars, because it's a Scorpio squaring your Leo, yeah? So if it was Sagittarius Virgo, I would look at Jupiter and Mercury square. If it's Capricorn Libra, I would look at Saturn Venus square. If it's square between your planet in Aquarius and Scorpio south node, I would look at Uranus square Pluto. Or Uranus square Mars. You get what I'm saying? So that's how you deepen. So don't just look for whatever planet Mars square Nodal Axis. Don't just look at that. Just really kind of, which is why the book by Rand Butler is fantastic. It gives you that kind of, it breaks away from those rules, astrological rules, and just talks in terms of archetypes and shadow and light and all the rest. So back to the resolution node so find your resolution node. So it could be a north or a south node, it doesn't matter. So whichever one it is, the house and the sign is the area that you need to, so that you need to resolve, or rather I need to rephrase that. That area of life and everything you have going on in that house, in that sign, in that cluster, if you have conjunctions, is how you resolve your skip step. It's kind of, or did I say that? Sorry. So it's like the advice and the suggestion, and I stand by this, but I just realized that I was poking my microphone. Hopefully it wasn't too loud. Sorry about that. I get a bit animated. So where was I? The suggestion, the advice, and I can vouch for it from my experience, but also what I observed again, is that this area of your lifetime, you need to focus on that, and you will probably find that if you're not familiar with this and you're just now looking into your square to your nodal axis, yeah, I mean, and you know, you'll see that I would imagine you will find that that's already happening in your life, that you kind of earlier part of your life, possibly, I don't know if it's Saturn return or it could be even Uranus opposition, and for me actually, yeah, for me it's because I have such a heavy weight conjunction to my south node. It's a bit, so if you have something heavy in your, like Pluto, Uranus, Saturn, Jupiter even, and Neptune in your south node, conjunction to your south node, then probably this was from the moment go of your birth, your most intense part of your life. And then it can take, if it's Uranus there, then I would say Uranus opposition would probably kind of free you from it. It would be finally the gates are open, you can start moving towards your north node. But even then you'll realize that with the square to the nodes, you never want to leave your south node. That's A point, and then B point is that yes, you don't want to leave your south node fully ever, because it's integral part of your path and of your lifetime. So, but you're just far more discerning about what you want to take on your way to your north node. Where with the square and the heavy planets in the south node, it's still similar, but I think there is something when you kind of crack it, which I'm not there, but I'm certainly closer to it than I was 20 years ago, 30 years ago. There is something you kind of all of a sudden are really, or not all of a sudden, but you find yourself being comfortable with both ends of your nodes, and you're kind of equally being in, equally not literally, but just like you have substantial activities that are meaningful and nourishing and supportive and deep work for you on either side of your nodal axis, as in on both ends of your nodes north and south. And so you find that, yeah, you'll find probably that the same or similar story for you as well. So to wrap up on resolution node, if it's just clean, like in this picture, and there's so many permutations, which is why I don't do cookbooks as well. It's like forever, infinity, incarnate. But if it's clean, let's say, for the sake of this tutorial, so you just have a south node in the house and a sign and a planet squaring it. I would then focus on, investigate that south node and that Jan Spiller book, Soul Astrology, for the soul, I think it's called, the soul astrology. I'll hold on. So investigate your south node from the point of view, what are you afraid of doing differently about your south node? So this is typically your north node, because they're opposite, but still, I wouldn't, the point is with the resolution node, don't worry too much about the north node, I wouldn't, till you kind of really stain your south node in areas that are uncomfortable, that are not familiar to you, or rather they are familiar, but you, in over so many lifetimes, you found a way to push them aside and not, you know, not deal with them and not have to live them or feel them, but they belong to the south node, right? So try to expand your comfort zone within the south node, and that typically would mean actually, so in Leo, you were a star, and let's say on stage, proper star celebrity like Hollywood, whatever, you know, or a king, or I mean, I'm using an example, you could do other kind of things, but so let's say that, like a king, I mean just an extreme, or queen. And so now, so the Aquarius would be to make an option, would be a, you know, a way to deal with, move it closer to the Aquarius, would be to make everyone feel like a king and queen, which they are. But I wouldn't even go that far. That will come, and you will do that. But I would actually kind of almost like look to both signs, to Virgo and Cancer. So tap into Cancer and Virgo energy if this is your chart, let's say. So Virgo is the one that culls the ego of Leo, and then Cancer is the one that keeps that ego away from shining. Like it's shy, and so it doesn't care to be on stage and to be a king or queen. It prefers to just be a little person in a little cute house and just have a little home and little family or whatever, just something cozy and very private and intimate and kind of away from the public eye, right? And Virgo is the one that goes, okay, you just really, let's deflate this ego, let's kind of purify of all these egotistical, egomaniacal, whatever things, you know, just not that Leo is egomaniacal, please, I love Leo, don't get me wrong. But what I just stumbled upon in sharing this is that this is a way of kind of working with the uncomfortable aspects of Leo. So Leo doesn't like not to be in the, I mean, this is just, like I say, one interpretation, one possible interpretation. You dig deep with Leo and then you'll find your own interpretation of this, but this is one of them. That, you know, Leo doesn't like to be, he's not shy, and he doesn't really like to sit in the shadows and then the shade and not be in the spotlight, and doesn't like his egos analyzed and himself analyzed or herself or whatever. But to kind of work with your, so an example would be, maybe you are actually, even though you love being on stage, you still are controlling about it, so it's not just for your family, you make performances in your garden where there are 3 people watching or there's no one watching. Push yourself to be on the bigger stage so you get the Virgo criticism and you experience the Cancer shyness and kind of really squirming thing being on stage. May have been a king or a queen, but in this lifetime you're not. You're absolutely none of that. You're just, let's say, just you know, you're a clerk in an office, and maybe you have amateur dramatics kind of dreams, but because you've been a king and a queen, you're used to just absolute applaud and adoration, and you know that you won't get it because it's just you're not that king and queen anymore. But you're drawn to the stage, hence You need to push through. Virgo and Cancer, that kind of squirmy, shyness of like desire to be on stage, but actually no, you feel too shy because you don't want them to not like you, and you don't want to leave your comfort zone and your nest of your life at home, where you just watch the movies and read books about people like you'd like to be or you were once on King and Queens, right? So hopefully so that's how you focus on your resolution node. You sit there for as long as you get comfy, until you get comfy with those uncomfortable expressions, manifestations of that, uncomfortable feelings rather. You do your South node differently than your past life. Like I say, it's amateur dramatics as opposed to king of a kingdom. But you push yourself finally on that stage because that Leo loves it, but it might not be of that grand and royal and regal stage that you once were on, and that's the piece you need to crack. And once you have cracked it, then it's kind of like you have healed that part of you. And so the planet squaring coming from Scorpio squaring it will be essentially the trust and the power issues that were associated with this. So who has the power? You gave them all the power in keeping you saw them so powerful that you would never dread on getting on stage. You took the power back to yourself, Scorpio, right? The empowered Scorpio. And you have the strength and you have the resilience, also Scorpio. And you will allow it to transform you, Scorpio. It will transform you from this kind of, couch stage loving person to an actual stage person. Yeah. So you see how when you start with your resolution node, it starts to heal your square as well, your squared planet. And as you get on stage, so the way this works, it's like anytime there is a square, when you focus on one of the legs of the square, you get kicked by the other leg. So, but the art and the shadow work here is that you do not give into the kick. You acknowledge it and you withstand, because now, today, within this hour, I'm on stage and I will not let my Scorpio Mars, let's say, or whatever, Scorpio planet squaring my nodal axis, to derail me. I will withstand all that fires of transformation. I could feel myself not being the same person anymore because I'm actually braving myself to withstand that horror of being exposed and being seen, which is kind of Scorpio, which is the Scorpio Leo square anyway. It's that sense of this is the most intimate part of me, Scorpio, now being seen. It might not be literally, but because you're not literally maybe sharing your actual, unless it is a monodrama that you've written about your life and your abusive childhood, let's say, being Scorpio squaring it could be quite sinister or sexually sinister as well. But even so that could be actually your ultimate goal, or rather ultimate dream, to be that brave to put that on stage. And you need to work towards that, and you start by just slowly, incrementally making those steps, and getting to a place where you withstand that profoundly, excruciatingly painful exposure that Pluto, or rather Scorpio archetype, feels when it's like faced with this kind of amorphous, anonymous masses of people that they don't have actually meaningful connection with in terms of intimate, personal. They're now being visible to them. So that's a horror idea. That's the nightmare vision of Scorpio. But because it's squaring your Leo, who wants to get on stage and wants to shine and wants to show itself, you will have to contend with that. And the moment you get on stage, you'll be kicked by your Scorpio. But you do your shadow work by staying on the stage and just letting this thing scorch you inside you, and eventually make you, cleanse you, eventually. Almost like it works on removing the hubris, which then moves you towards, in this case, Aquarius, North Node. And by move you, it just means that you start to become, to find so much nourishment and enrichment in, so let's stick with this metaphor, the story I was using. You by now, after your trials and tribulations and all this scorching and phoenix kind of rising from your ashes, sorry, I think I'm messing with my mic, I'm so sorry. you now are in a position, you have your own theatre and you are a producer. So you create a space for everyone else to do what you've been doing. And that's kind of Aquarius. It's like we are all shining stars on a stage, and we all are equally contributing, or rather we're equally important because we have our contributions that are not equal, meaning in the sense that we're all individuals, therefore it's all different. We all have something else and different to add to the bigger picture, to this creative process of producing a play on a stage. But that's it. That's how you move from being on stage to coming behind the stage, because you have now lived out this South Node desire to be on stage and to be this, because the desire was to purge yourself, because it's a squaring, so the purging is always happening through a square, but themes are Scorpio, Leo in this example of mine, because that's what it is, and those are like the deep phoenixy kind of, death and transformation through death, dying on stage. Isn't that an expression actually in the theatre arts? I'm not into theatre arts, but I love theatre. But anyway, and so yeah. Right, I just realized this is quite a long video. Okay, I'm gonna move on to the actual aspects. So if you have a one planet, and in this case this is this red zone here, red square, circle, so that's one planet. But also you can have few planets around, like a cluster, like a stellium as it's called in astrology, a group of planets squaring your nodal axis. And as long as the conjunctions are within, I don't know, 5 to 8 degrees, and again, it's like if it's a cluster, I would take them, unless there is like a 20 degrees between them, then maybe not. But otherwise I would take them all to be a square to the nodal axis. That what happens is we would say you have a T-square, and T-square, so T-square is, as you can see, it's this red piece here is like a T, right, with a little square, circle at the bottom, at the root of it, and the green piece is the missing leg. Now, why is this missing leg important? And just if I haven't said already, I mean, squares are the most dynamic. I must have said it, or maybe not so many words. So this is, in this instance, so you have nothing opposite your planet squaring the nodal axis, but that area of your chart, which is why I made it like a whole kind of highlight, green highlight of a house, full house, and in this case it's Taurus. So let's stick with this metaphor, with this actual example. So that, what you will find, I personally think so, this is what I've seen and how I experienced it, is that area of your chart is where you find, it's like, it supports, so it is actually a good thing that I put it green here. It literally is like a fertile ground, or the landing ground on which you can just rest, but also recuperate, but also whatever work you're doing there, it kind of supports this T-square. So in this case, this would be everything to do with Taurus and second house, so practicing self-reliance, also simplicity in life, away from drama, particularly for any square, that kind of thing would be anyway good, but with the T-square. But it's that removal from drama, or rather like a break from crisis and crisis mentality and mindset, is to be found in the activities and the themes of the house or the planet. Well, if the planets, then that's a different story. I'll talk about in a second. So focus on your house and sign opposite the planet squaring your nodal axis, and go there for retreats, for like a spa break, like a retreat, and the activities of that house, and particularly when like the moon is in the house, or in that sign, particularly new and full moons, pay attention to them, because they'll be opposite your house. And then being the moon, it's like time to nurture yourself. So withdraw and just whatever rocks your boat, whatever does it for you, but just kind of spend some quiet contemplative time, even if it's a full moon, particularly if it's a full moon. Kind of remove yourself from the outside world if you can, and that's the time to contemplate this T-square as well. which I suppose even if you don't try, it will probably coming up as a theme anyway. But if you're intentional about this, it will help you certainly work with it. And the last one is the last type of square you can have to the nodal axis. So you can have essentially two kinds. One when it's a T-square and one it's a grand cross. So here you can see the nodal axis, yellow, and in red are two planets opposite each other, and therefore on this side squaring the axis, and then on this side as well squaring the axis. So together all four are creating what's called the grand cross. Right, it is recording. So with both squares, I mean, this is like a, sorry, before then, this is the most dynamic constellation you can have in your chart, meaning aspect or configuration, I think it's called, in your chart, to have a grand cross. And then what you then want to investigate, obviously the signs and the planets and all that, but also spend some time thinking about the modality or quality of this cross. So in this case, this is a fixed cross. You can have a mutable cross if this involved Gemini, Sagittarius, Pisces, Virgo, or you can have a cardinal cross if it involved Capricorn, Cancer, Libra and Aries. So you can have three types of grand crosses, so see which one is yours. Now you could have this to be out of quality, so you could have, you know, one of the planets is not in the opposite sign, but it's opposite because one of the planets is at the end of a sign and then the other planet is at the beginning of the next sign. So that kind of, I find that almost adds to the complexity, but at the same time, in fact, yes, there can be, I was going to say there can be, no, I was thinking of a trine or something else, sorry. If the planet is, let's say, in Aries and the other planet is in Scorpio, but they're still opposite because it's at the very beginning of Scorpio, whatever, and then this is at the very end of Aries, then they are technically in opposition, and therefore they would definitely make a grand cross. But one of those planets will be trining your south node and sextiling your, in this case, sextiling your north node. So in this case that would be Aries planet, not in the case I drew here, but it just came to me as I was doing this. And that planet is like sometimes where you can find yourself like your friend, or rather where you have the most the easiest time of the all, like the crises in that area of your life are you're most likely at home most with. And even though my take on this and from what I've seen is that having a grand cross makes you very much at home with crisis in any shape or form, as in the form of your very particular grand cross with all its qualities and everything, houses and all the rest that it does. But having that one planet that's in a sign that's compatible, if you like, with your nodal axis, that makes it slightly like less challenging and more fun, if you like, more fun possibly, and also like where other people might find you less challenging for them. Again, here I would very much try to understand the opposition between your planets that are opposing. So just Google that and just research that. But the point I want to make, and I want to read something, and that's it, I'm wrapping it up. This is properly long one. For me, the point of a square, any square or any of these challenging, or any aspect essentially, it's to, so you think of this as a tent. So you know how you go, tent has this like a metal frame, but more to the point that it has those things you need to, at least tents when I used to go camping, which was a long time ago. You have those ropes, you need to sort of push them far away from the tent to tighten the actual tent itself, the material that's like you sleep under. So the further the tent, the more the tension, the greater the tension, although there is a point of a snapping, so this is all good words and language to apply to your square, Grant's cross here, I mean. So you don't want to go too far, but you want to keep this tension. That's why it's dynamic and that's why it's challenging. But it's usually, and I'll get to that now, my actually favorite piece for me in this video, is why it's actually far more challenging for other people to be around people with the Grand Cross than for the Grand Cross person themselves. And the problem for Grand Cross person is, the only problem Grand Cross people have is other people. And by that I mean, if you happen to love people who have a problem with your Grand Cross, even though they might not know that that's a problem with your Grand Cross, or that they have a problem with your Grand Cross, you will, their struggles with you, their lack of, not love, but liking of you, their desires to change you is what upsets you. So not you the way you are, and rightly so, but you'll get upset, you know, and that I've had a few people in my life, personal but also clients, and you can just, the only proper torture the Grand Cross person feels, it's like, why isn't she love me? Why can't she just accept me? What's their problem with me? They're just like in my way. Why are they not letting me get on with this or that? And you know, the Grand Cross person still does what they do, but they do, you know, they're human, obviously, have a heart and everything, and they don't like not being liked, and no one likes being not accepted for who they are. And they feel the injustice of, why do people have problems with me? That's the biggest problem, not them being themselves. So to my tent metaphor, you want to be all these conflicting parts. You want to be your Leo North Node. You want to be your South Node. No, I meant your... When I look at North Node squiggle, I always think of Leo. That's why. You want to be your North Node in Aquarius. You want to be your planet in Scorpio. You want to be your South Node in Leo, and your planet in Taurus. You want to be all four and all the rest in your chart. But these four are going to be like the cross you're going to be carrying, but you will be carrying this cross phenomenally, joyfully, maybe joyfully, actually even not, because yeah, maybe that's not the theme of these planets and archetypes, but powerfully and empoweringly. And the key is not to apologize for any of it. And yes, you know, you'll be a handful. People will not be able to manage you. People will not. So my point is, don't try to squeeze into a round hole when you're a square, a Grand Cross. I mean, I know being called a square means you're pretty placid and stable, and Grand Cross is everything but. So it's not the best metaphor, but still. So for me, an example with this theater stage. So you now have this production house, so you have a theater of your own, and you're maybe even a director or producer, like I say. So you are the boss, and you work with these people because you're a good director. So as a director, you know how to get the most out of actors, but if you're into movies and films and cinematography and all that, you might have read and watched many documentaries on behind the scenes and heard about very difficult directors, well, like, you know, the demanding ones. But actually there is a respect from an actor, because it's a craft, and it's not about, you know, making anyone like you. It's about producing an amazing movie, and that would be taking a toll on everyone to a point. So the point is, you stick with your nodal axis of Leo and Aquarius, which are both fixed and quite domineering signs. So don't apologize for it, but you will have in you, as you know, and even if you don't, it's part of your fabric. I mean, I'm not condoning, you know, bullying or any kind of you know, aggressive, violent behavior, but again, you know, if that's so much in you, you carry it, and you own it, and you will pay the consequences of it, or you will live the consequences of it. My point is, you must not be worried about how others are receiving you. You're not meant to be necessarily well received by others, as in, this is too powerful a constellation to, and if you have any, this is actually Grand Cross for anyone, if you have any Grand Cross, not just Nodal Axis. So you do all 4 points intensely, and back to the tent metaphor, you tighten those ropes so the tent, the whole house, the whole chart, the whole of you is stable. And even though it's very dynamic, but it's not, spiraling out of control, because you own every single 4 points in this ground cross, and when you're in them, you're never in all of them at once, obviously, but when you're in one, you're in one. When you're another, you're another. I mean, it doesn't. And in any of these points, when you're in them, you will have all other 3 coming at you. But that's the work. That's, you just do your one thing and let the other 3 come at you, and you just still do the work of the thing you're in. And by the thing, I'm talking of the 4 points. So when you're in your Scorpio house, you do your Scorpio house planet, and the other things, you feel them coming at you, literally or metaphorically or symbolically or however, psychically, and you just, you're aware of them, you acknowledge them, but you don't stop doing your Scorpio house at that moment in time, because that's where you're at. The work is to not be dismantled by the other 3, is to withstand the other 3 and still do the work of the 4th one you're in. And the last piece about synastry, when you have, which I have also a video on. So when your partner squares your nodal axis, or you square the nodal axis, that particular function is there in their life. That's usually, typically a karmic connection. And by karmic, I don't mean just that it's like beautiful, amazing, and I'm thinking romantic connection here, that may too be the case, but it's really the point of you getting together is to work through those squares. So if you're being squared but they're not being squared, although your nodal axis will be squaring them, so your journey will be a kind of something that triggers them, because it's a square, right? So your path, your soul's evolution will be something that will be triggering them, and this planet that triggers your nodal axis will be the archetype and everything to do with it, and the house where it's at, the function. So let's say it is Mars, as I've been talking about. Then the planet of Mars in the sign and in the house, in this case in Scorpio in 8th, it could be the sexuality, the trust, the power games, the violence, it's like they would be challenging. They don't have to be any of these things. You can have a good or great sex life with them, or there could be great attraction, or may not be. I don't necessarily. I would imagine there would be, but the point is that when you're in that either bedroom or in a private space of you two only, like at home in the intimate space, it doesn't have to be literally naked bodies. It can be just literally naked souls, right? They will challenge you on your where you're at when it comes to trusting yourself, trusting them, power. You may feel like they play power games, but they're really probably just or maybe they are. So then it's for you to call them on it, or to get better at it, or to find the way to show them that there is no point in playing power games, or to get wise about yourself, so you actually don't let them trigger you. You learn to kind of own yourself and your power, and don't let their ways trigger you anymore, and that power games affect you anymore, and you will see, as if by magic, you all dissolves and disappears the moment you change. Everything else changes, and they don't even know it. And it's the most wonderful way of, I think, working on yourself within a relationship is far more effective, I feel, than going to couples therapy. So this planet that squares your nodal axis, from your partner's planet that squares your nodal axis, all the things associated with the sign and the planet and the house will be the themes that they are teaching you to get really good at and get wise about, because in a relationships you didn't do them well, or just you didn't do them well, but they're not your skip steps. So in a way you can always choose not to be with them, and that's where the kind of composite chart comes into it, and because that's kind of the chart of your work. So if you like where you together as a couple are meant to be going, and if that chimes with your own path, or you just like it or whatever, then I would say this work is worth doing. Well, it's essential if you were to stay together. So you have to do the work if you like your composite chart between you two. But if you like, if you find that your composite chart doesn't, really kind of doesn't, you don't want to go there, you've been there, let's say it's all clustered around your south node, and then fair enough, so there would be a strong karmic pull there, definitely, I would imagine. Well, I would definitely put my money on it, but in a way it's almost like, yeah, I mean, if you have a lot of south node conjunctions, maybe good, because then you're working on it already. But if you have a clean, like this is your chart, you have nothing on your south node, and let's say you have something on your north node or not, but you have a clean south node and you have no squares, then really this whole emphasis on your south node, it's like, I don't know, really, I would think twice about it. I wouldn't hang around there much. And you probably will find that it wouldn't be there much. But if it's somewhere where you're going anyway and you want to go, then the fact that they have a planet that squares your nodal axis, even if you don't have a planet squaring your nodal axis, is a great opportunity to work through something that, well, it could have all kinds of meanings, depending on your personal charts and synastry, and I'll do all that reading if you want to come to me. But it would be such a great few arrows in your quiver. I think that's the expression. Tools in your box. So that you, as a couple, work through the stuff that you need to work through as a couple, because as a couple, not just synastry, but as your karmic work, as your soul work, that as a couple, your relationship is about, and it will get you to those places that you actually, when you check your composite chart, really love. That's a wonderful recipe to get there. Okay, and that's it. God, this is the longest. And my throat is okay, so hopefully you understood me. Sorry for all the noises, if there were any. I'm sure there were. But yeah, I shall see you soon again. Thank you for watching, and hopefully this was helpful. Bye bye. Well, I'm sorry, I forgot to do two more things. So I forgot to mention the situation when you have planets opposite each other, both squaring the nodes, in which case each of these planets will have a different resolution node. So I spoke already about the south node being a resolution to a Scorpio planet in this instance, in this example of mine. But we also have in the case of a Grand Cross, we have a planet in this example in Taurus, and the resolution node for this skip step in Taurus is the north node in Aquarius. So again, in order to resolve your skip step in Taurus, whatever planet it is or planets, or archetypes, you want to start with your north node in Aquarius. So first, because it's a north node, there's far less potentially shadow there, but potential for you to live in the shadows of that node. But I always say just always be vigilant to. So one kind of an example of an obvious possibly error, or an obvious thing that people would miss, is that activism is essentially a shadow of Aquarius, and that's a video in itself. But my point is, as long as you seek validation externally, that is a shadow in my experience, in my view. Okay, it's never such a blank statement, but those are, start there and then make your own mind up. Whenever you know that you're seeking validation from others, however noble a cause, all I'm inviting you to do is just stop and think, just stop at that point and just kind of contemplate why that is and what's in it for you, what's less noble about that desire of yours, that impulse, that and if you're happy with what you find, that's all good, really. Shadow is essentially parts of us that we are ashamed of, and also what we project in the world. So there are two parts to that. So we either hide and we know we're hiding it, and or we don't know we're hiding it because we projected it. So that's activism. We project the enemy outside, and it's not us. We're the good ones. We know So that's where I'm kind of calling you, and that's calling you to contemplate your reasons for activism, if this is your case, North Node in Aquarius. Or, I mean, that could be also for any planet you have in Aquarius, or your Aquarius house. And so there is potential, because with the squares and skip steps, it means, like I said at the beginning, that you've been at both ends of this axis, of nodal axis. So since it's not completely new to you, you're not kind of, you haven't got that blank slate and the opportunity to make it all good and do it right, because you haven't got bad examples of it. In your case, you may have, in a case of skip steps chart, you may have well had some bad examples of your North Node as well. So be vigilant of shadow work, or shadow stuff there as well. But essentially, to resolve your Taurus planet in this example, you want to be doing your North Node in Aquarius, whatever that means. So basically, sign, house, and any conjunctions you may have there. And on the topic of shadow, this is the piece I said many minutes ago, half an hour ago or longer, that it's my favorite, and I might make some more videos on this. Actually, I really enjoy this. This kind of marries my degree in literature, my love of literature, of language, and all its instabilities and ambiguities and unreliability of language, and so yeah, and astrology, obviously. So to analyze texts and show you how I work with this. So this is an example. This is cafeastrology.com, as you can see on the top of my screen. I don't know if this would be better. Maybe it's better. Sorry. So Cafe Astrology, and it's about. Oh, sorry. Something funny happened. Okay, so this is the piece I wanted to read. So. Cafe Astrology, this is talking about Grand Cross, which is the last aspect I was just talking about. And basically, they're quoting two astrologers, I would imagine. I don't know who they are, but from a book from their stuff, this is what these astrologers are saying. So that's essentially what this paragraph is about. So they state that from childhood, so I'm reading it out to you. From childhood, the owner of a natal chart with a Grand Cross tries to find himself in different fields of activity. But in all activities he is inflexible, inclined to impose his designs on the world, and perceives little of the world's reaction to his actions. Such people are very confident in their correctness and do not turn aside, but concede only under great pressure, and then only for a while. So the reason I'm showing you this paragraph, apart from that it's an explanation of Grand Cross, what I talked about, it's more really to show you how I use these readily available billions of articles free online on all these things I don't cover in detail myself, because like I say, we have so much out there. And the way I work with this, and this is my long life journey with astrology, so much coughing, is that, so in this paragraph I imagine, and I know that certainly in the past, I certainly would have been taking it away. I'm going to tell you in a second. So here, the implication, as I would have read it for many years when I was much younger, is that inflexible, inclined to impose his designs on the world, perceives little of the world's reaction to his actions, so not very perceptive. Confident in their do not turn, so confident, maybe arrogant, sort of underline meaning there, do not turn aside, meaning just, don't give up, but concede only under great pressure and only for a while, meaning they just don't like to be told what to do. They have their own vision and they will pursue it and they will get back to it. So all of this, when they're, they will get back to it, basically. They will not leave anyone else's vision, basically. And so my point here is that some decades ago when I read this, I would have felt judgment that, yes, I would have recognized myself as such. I mean, I do have a Grand Cross, but it's, anyway, I would have recognized myself as such, and I would feel affronted, as in, like, I would feel like I've been judged, basically, like, oh, you're inflexible, oh, you're bossy, oh, you don't give in to other people, you stick to your things, you pursue no matter what, you don't care what other people think of you, you don't care if you upset them. That's, in so many words, I would have read this. Maybe I would have, a bit blown it out of proportions, but I don't know. I definitely would have felt a flavor of this, and the younger version of me, quite a bit of flavor of this. And yet, this is exactly not the shadow. This is what I meant earlier, that the Grand Cross people, the only problem in their lives are others, and the only thing that they feel pain is when they receive this sort of feedback. Oh, you're inflexible. Oh, look at you, you're not sensitive to my emotions. Oh, you don't think about me, you don't care about me, or you don't care what I think. You think you're always right. Well, you are always right for you. And the problem is when the Grand Cross person wants the world to like them. So when you want the world to like you, you want the world to think like you, because you don't want to give up what you think and what you like because you know it's right for you. But because you also want the world to like you, because however tough, however evolved, well, maybe not evolved, but however tough and strong and, we are independent and we are confident, we all crave that sense of, because it's not fair not to be liked, in a sense. It's, unless we're murdering and just being absolutely, damaging life, literally, really, what's wrong? What is there not to like? It might not be to your liking, but it's not in itself wrong or bad or evil or just, it doesn't warrant all this barrage of criticism and judgment, let's say. So that's, I think, at the core of all of us who are not serial killers or just like criminals on a proper big scale. Excuse me. And that's something I would actually love to debate one day soon, probably. Not so much astrologically, but I'm not going to go into it now. So everything short of being a murderer or just taking other life, is really someone else's taste, someone else's opinion, and it doesn't make you, this person, wrong with the Grand Cross in this case, or bad, or just bad, right? Even though someone else thinks you're bad, but it happens to be someone you fell in love with or someone you just work with, and it's this sense of unfairness. Like, I don't want to be, I don't deserve this sort of judgment. I'm not a bad person. Yes, you don't like me. Yes, I don't really work for you, meaning I don't, you don't get me, or I don't really do it for you, right? And then because you kind of are stuck with them, because either it's your job or it's your marriage, it's your parent or whatever, but there's always a way out. We don't have to sit in these relationships. So that's my point. The problem with any Grand Cross person is, or any person, is when we want to convince the world that they should think like us, because otherwise we'll feel so unfairly ostracized and excommunicated and judged and made to feel bad, like in this instance. And this is a very mild example, but I presume you can feel some kind of tone there, that it's like kind of reprimanding, or it's like, oh, inflexible. Whoever used the word as a compliment. So this is about now reappropriating language, or rather there's that word when you revisited, giving new meaning. I can't remember. There's a word for it anyway. So this is how I work. If you're reading this, if this is you, and you feel cold and you feel like slighted that you call these things, but really means that you're just. Oh, by the way, I was going to say, this is a Steve Jobs. And yes, he's not known to be the nicest of people, but look what he's done for the world. What he's done is just created something new, something so innovative, so original, so amazing, so something or whatever. And yeah, that's the price. And whoever uses Mac and whoever uses Apple, and it's an innovation in technology. It's like he's done his bit. The fact that he was a bit of an asshole, or considered to be an asshole, I'll say considered, because I don't know. I don't think anyone knows anyway. But yeah, my point is, you're not meant to be liked, particularly with a Grand Cross, and particularly when you read these kind of passages, take them. This is just coming from a judgment place, from a place of Piscean age, and Virgo, Pluto in Virgo generation, of like, and the church. I mean, okay, Pluto in Virgo wasn't just, but CNH is far beyond Pluto in Virgo generation, but Pluto in Virgo is opposite Pisces, so that's what I mean, and Pluto in Virgo in particularly potent Virgo vibe there, which is of, you're guilty, you are bad, you're not doing, something right, you're criticizing, so, but it is bigger. It's a Piscean age. It's the sort of the Christianity, not maybe as a denomination, but as that kind of right and wrong, bad and evil, or bad and good, or bad and evil, bad and good. Sorry. And so when you read these articles, just be very vigilant as this language. It's actually, your point is to be inflexible. That's, there are so many other people that can be flexible. It's that's what they're there for. You're not to be flexible. Don't feel like, don't change. Be careful that when you see this kind of paragraph, you read it, I am now trying to convince you to think like me. And yes, I do, because I think it's so important not to give into these subtle, almost imperceptible, but really still embedded in the language of texts. Every left, right, and center. I write them, I'm sure there's judgment in what I write. Yeah, well, today's texts. So just be vigilant and just keep remembering that in the case of Grand Cross, and I'm wrapping it up, this is, I'm recording, God. This is what you're meant to be. You're meant to be inflexible. You're not meant to be like particularly. If you're into human design, this is kind of like a manifestor vibe. You're just meant to be doing your own thing, and people will find you jarring. I think manifestors have that energy, that's called repellent, and that is, for instance, awful word, absolutely awful word, and yet it's an energy that's meant to not attract, because you have everything as a manifestor. You don't need anyone. God, do I want to be a manifestor, and I'm generator that attracts like flies and poos and the rest of the metaphors. As a manifestor, you truly have a path to yourself, to do your thing, and no one's going to stand in your way, because they kind of won't like you. Yeah, they won't particularly like you, because you're just, too kind of like one track, because you are, you have this thing and you're going for it, and go for it. Don't let anyone stand in your way. And you don't need to knock anyone out of your way, because they won't be there anyway, but, don't see that as a bad thing. That's exactly who you are and how you're meant to be. And that's a Grand Cross in this example is very much a manifestor flavor, because, or just Grand Cross in not just in the example of the chart, of the Nodal Axis, but if you have 4 planets forming a Grand Cross, that's even more potent, and that's a very much human design manifestor vibe. And the point is, you are not meant to be looking after anyone and caring what anyone thinks. You're meant to just do your thing and do that vision and make it happen, and not apologize for it. And that's it on that note. I shall see you soon again next week.